Hello and welcome to the morning sports briefing here on the 17th of May, coming to you at 7 a.m. every single morning on New Zealand Sports Radio. And today in the news, we have the Bundesliga restarts. NRL keeps all 22 referees, and even Coach Mike Cron is not immune to the New Zealand rugby cuts. So let's jump straight into it with that football news. And before we get on to the Bundesliga and obviously our favourite league in the world, the Belarusian Premier League, New Zealand and Australia anxiously wait to see whether they'll be able to host the jointly host the Women's World Cup in 2023. The FIFA Council meets on June the 25th to decide that, and there are 4 people who have submitted bids for this. Brazil, Colombia, and Japan are the other 3. And what's the and what FIFA has described as being the most competitive bidding process ever for this. The 37-member council will vote and have an open vote on this. Hello, Rugby, looking at you there. And all the inspections happened pre-COVID in January and February. So we'll find out on the 25th of June if New Zealand and Australia will be able to jointly host that one. Over in the Belarusian League, and we had 3 games overnight. Energetic beat Dynamo Brest 2-1. Shakator beat Slavia 2-0, and Bate beat Sluts 3-0. So 3 home wins there, and that makes it 4 home wins out of 4 games this weekend. Bate goes back to top of the league, overtaking Torpedo, whilst Sluts, my team, drop out of those European places down to 4th in the table. Disaster, I tell you, absolute disaster. Over in the Bundesliga, a whole host of games there. Borussia Dortmund beat Schalke 04 4-0. RB Leipzig and Freiburg fought out a 1-1 draw. Hoffenheim lost at home 0-3 to Hertha BSC. Fortuna Düsseldorf and Paderborn also had a 0-0 draw. Augsburg scored 1 goal but lost to Wolfsburg, who scored 2. And then Eintracht Frankfurt lost out to Borussia Mönchengladbach 1-3. We still have 3 more games to go this round, so we'll report on those over the next couple of days. Now, I'm going to hand you over now to Stephen Harris, who will take us through the birthdays.
Good morning, Paul, and good morning, everybody out there. In birthdays today, considered unlucky not to have represented England, an all-white who scored on debut, and finally, a Commonwealth Games gold medalist. Scott Curry, born this day, the 17th of May, 1988, is a New Zealand rugby union player. He plays for the New Zealand Rugby Sevens team. He made his debut at the 2010 Dubai Sevens. He was included in the squad for the 2014 Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. However, New Zealand lost to South Africa 12-17 in the final. Curry, who turns 32 today, however, made up for the disappointment of Glasgow, winning the Commonwealth gold medal on the Gold Coast 4 years later in 2018. He trained as a science teacher. Finally, Michael McGarry, born this day, 17th of May 1965, was a successful association footballer who frequently represented New Zealand in the 1980s and 1990s. McGarry, who turns 55 today, scored on debut for the All Whites in a 4-2 win over Fiji on the 17th of September 1986, and he ended his international career having pulled on the All Whites shirt 87 times, which included 12 goals along the way. And we'll try that again. And finally, this time, Jason Christopher Woodward, born this day, the 17th of May, 1990 in Wellington, New Zealand, is a rugby union player who currently plays for Gloucester Rugby in the Gallagher Premiership. Woodward started his career in Wellington, moved across to Super Rugby franchise, the Melbourne Rebels, in 2013, before returning to the Hurricanes in 2015 and the 2016 season. The outside back, who turns 30 today, headed north to Bristol at the end of the 2016 season before ultimately finding a home at Gloucester. And that pretty much wraps up our birthdays this morning. Interesting though, Jason Woodward, was he that close to the England team, Paul?
Not really that close, I don't think. Maybe called up to a wider training squad by Eddie, but Eddie Jones seemed to call up all sorts of people up to wider training squads at one time or another. Interesting thing about Gloucester is that Johan Ackermann, the ex-Lions coach, has agreed to end his contract early and is heading over to Japan. So yes, his stint there at Gloucester promised a lot, but didn't quite deliver, unfortunately, for them. Moving over, and we have news. We announced yesterday that the July test window had been postponed, and there has been a conference call between the Tier 1 nations, when we also talked about the fact that the Six Nations could move by a month. Well, that October window could actually start this year, with the July tests happening in October before the Southern Hemisphere teams go north for the November tests. There was a World Working Group, and obviously that's all going to come down to government guidance and rules. But Robinson says that there's really excitement about the possibility of July series being moved to later in the year in October, and I can guess that for this year. We think we can build a great narrative around the international calendar by virtue of doing that. I'm not sure how you increase the narrative just by moving tests from July to October, so we'll have to see what that really means. You've got to think there have got to be other changes in the works for there to be a greater narrative, in all honesty. We also mentioned there that at the top of the show that All Black coaching legend Mike Cron was not immune to the New Zealand rugby cuts. And yes, as we all know, New Zealand rugby is going through a consultation process, looking at losing up to half of their 180 staff. One of those that they will be losing is Mike Cron, who has been in a sort of mentoring coaching role. And that he does clearly say that he is a nice to have, not a need to have role, and that he will keep doing his mentoring of coaches worldwide anyway. So sorry, he was contracted as a resource coach after finishing his full-time position. So as he says, yeah, a nice to have role, not a need to have role, and he holds no animosity towards New Zealand rugby, but it just goes to show you that where the cuts are taking place. Over in Australia, and Rugby Australia is going to get a 14 million Australian dollar loan from World Rugby, 15.3 million in New Zealand money, or in real money. And this will help tide them over the next 12 months, but will not solve all their challenges. And it's good to notice that Lisa's saying this will not solve all the challenges, because clearly this won't. They, just like New Zealand, also have been losing money year on year. And so, look, that is running a deficit year on year, I should say, sorry. So yes, there's more to fixing their problems than just a one-off loan. But it's good that will keep them going for the next 12 months, and we'll possibly see Bledisloe Cup games before the end of the year. I'm going to hand you back to Stephen now, who'll take us through the league news.
Thanks again, Paul. League news: ARL Commission Wayne Pearce has guaranteed the NRL will retain a squad of 22 full-time referees beyond this season. The league is currently in mediation talks with the referees union after making the controversial decision to abandon the two-referee model this week. Consultation has been adjourned until Tuesday. Pearce promised the governing body will press on with the move, which has drawn fierce criticism from numerous players and coaches. The development means full-time referees will be deployed as touch judges, a role traditionally filled on part-time contracts. So effectively, what we've got is all our full-time squad running either the centre field refereeing positions or the sideline. While the part-time officials face an uncertain future, Pearce went on to assure the union that a minimum of 22 referees will stay on next season. Not necessarily the personnel, because if they don't step up, they won't be there again next year, he said. But the same number of officials will be there again next year as minimum. That's something we're speaking to the union about. They're not going to be cutting numbers in that space. Pearce also defended accusations the PRL match officials weren't consulted about the shock change in the referee model. The PRLR MO on Thursday submitted a complaint to the Fair Work Commission, claiming the NRL had breached their enterprise agreement. As soon as the recommendation to the commission was made, there was consultation with the union. Pearce said that, in my opinion, what needed to happen. I don't know where the problems lie, but I'm sure that will come to the fore as negotiations go forward. Now, we're just going to have a quick look at a little bit of Super League news this morning. Haven't really touched on that for a while. Super League are considering extending the season in the hope supporters will be able to get back inside the grounds to watch the conclusion of the campaign. Further discussions were held between clubs yesterday on how best to restart the season, with issues such as a salary cap and safe return to training for players also examined. A working group consisting of a small number of clubs have been tasked with planning to find a way forward for the game to resume, with having fans inside stadiums as part of the discussions. And if we can recall, earlier in the season, we'll just have a quick look at the table where they were. Some teams had pretty much or very much played 7 rounds, 6, 5, and 4 respectively, and Wigan Warriors and Castleford Tigers were at the top of the table on 10 points. So it's going to be interesting to see if they actually do have crowds back to the games so soon. So we will follow that story with interest. And that's our league news today. Back to you, Paul. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And the ATP and the WTA tours, so in tennis, both of them have suspended all of their July events, which is unsurprising under the current circumstances. That means we still have the the US Open scheduled to take place in New York at the end of August, and then also the French Open rescheduled to take place in late September and early October. So those events are still currently scheduled to take place. Wimbledon obviously made the decision they would cancel this year's event entirely. So it seems to me, in all honesty, with the rates we have in America at the moment, or in the USA at the moment, it seems highly unlikely that will go ahead. But still, that is the situation with tennis. And when we get any update, we will let you know. So thank you for joining us. You have started the day the best way, up to date with all the important sports news. Don't forget you can join us tomorrow at 7 a.m. For the morning sports briefing, or you can listen to it on your way to work as a podcast on iTunes, iHeartRadio, or Spotify, or your favorite podcatcher. Just search for New Zealand Sports Radio. Have a great weekend.